2017 has been an exercise in mental stamina. The sheer concentration of utterly unbelievable events has shattered the flow of time completely. I regularly see tweets reminding me that Event X happened 6 months ago, when I feel like we started discussing it only moments prior, when Subject Y actually happened earlier today, and I feel like I've spent my entire life debating both it and the relevant implications of Catastrophe Z. Didn't we reach a consensus on Subject Y already? How are we still talking about this? I regularly feel like not only has 2016 never ended, but also that I've been constantly awake since then, stuck in a miasma of things that have blown past parody and settled on incomprehensible. I get all kinds of advice to help me stop feeling like this, like get another hobby or log off Twitter, but neither of these is especially realistic. I've decided that to help convince myself that 2016 did actually end and that 2017 was a separate year, I'll make a list of the games that I'd say defined this year for me, if only so I can give it any definition at all. One of the few silver linings I have to go off is that an enormous number of fantastic games came out this year. Far too many for one mere hobbyist to play them all, and I fully intend to use this fact to misdirect from the truth, which is that I basically haven't played any of them. Oh, and just so everybody knows up front, a lot of great games came out for the Nintendo Switch this year, but I won't be including any of those on my list because I don't own one. Any complaints about this should be sent in writing to Nintendo UK headquarters and include the phrase, "Please send Curly a Nintendo Switch." The first thing you'll notice about this list is that not all of the games on it came out this year, but it's too late, I've made the list now and you can't stop me. I can't help it, these are just the games that stuck out to me this year. And you can still play them, honest, I won't judge you. Here are, in no particular order, my games of 2017. Number 10. XCOM 2. Clearly this is not a good start. A huge expansion came out for this game this year though, so I don't feel too bad. I spent actual years trying to figure out what all the fuss was about the first Firaxis XCOM game's unique brand of high-stress, turn-based, permadeath alien shoot, before finally getting it in late 2015. It turned out that all I needed to win the global strategic game and stop Brazil from burning down was to buy satellites, and once I did that, the game was super fun, if at times kind of slow. So when XCOM 2 was announced, I was really excited. So excited, in fact, that I waited until Christmas of 2016 to actually get it, 10 months after its release. When I finally did get it, though, I was floored. XCOM 2 whips up Firaxis' formula to maximum speed, introducing mission timers and a number of other mechanics to keep the game from falling into that sluggish, business-like routine that missions in the previous game could be. You can't just gradually work your way across each map, taking as few risks as possible anymore. You're disempowered, you can't stay long, this isn't your land to defend. You have to dash, you have to make compromises, and I love having to make compromises. XCOM 2 is often an agonizing game to play, but it's just so pacey, in a way that actually kind of ruins the previous one. I'd never really want to go back to those minimum pressure scenarios. But by far my favourite thing about the game is that it follows on from Enemy Unknown by taking the darkest interpretation of the ending as rote. The psychic recruit may have succeeded, but did you really think that was the whole invasion? XCOM failed. You failed. And it's up to you to pick up the pieces. The shadowy council of fickle states has been replaced by the iron fist of Advent. But not you, Counselor. You'd never leave me.
Hello, Commander.
And their visual design is absolutely stunning. All the bold colours and angular shapes, and how they contrast with the curved shapes of the aliens they're tacitly hiding. It's honestly unfair how good it looks. Look at that. Phew. Number 9. Heat Signature. Heat Signature, in addition to being a game that came out this year, is a procedurally generated galactic grudge-settling game by Tom Francis, what made that cool thing called Gunpoint that maybe you've heard of. Every character you can play starts with nothing but a name, a set of tools, and a face burned into their memory. A face you'll be helping them to break, capture, or rescue across the game's vast, serene galaxy. A typical session of Heat Signature sees you pick up a mission from the local information broker, take your neat little boarding pod out towards the stars before locating the target vessel, docking, and space kung-fuing the shit out of everyone on board. The action is a sort of top-down real-time combat, like Hotline Miami or the old Grand Theft Auto games, but with extremely liberal control of the flow of time, with a pause button you can press at any time to contemplate your next move. Also liberal is the host of wonderful toys you get to play with. The item generation system lets you graduate from the humble, hefty monkey wrench all the way to silenced grenade shotguns if you're lucky enough. The ability to teleport anything to your hand at any time, combined with the diverse array of tools, the pause system, and the fixed firing rate of your guns, creates a deeply cool action puzzle, where even though you never need to rely on your own reaction time, you can still be overwhelmed by a situation, unable to use your teleporter again before that bullet puts you into critical condition. A lovely turn is that the aforementioned information broker is feeding you the information in exchange for help undermining the various factions that are imposing themselves on the denizens of the galaxy. The more work you do for her, the more her revolution progresses, the more the network of free stations provide you with better access to cool tech for the whole galaxy, for all your future characters. But my favourite part is that with every mission you complete, with every heroic deed, the next is less of a feat of defiance, less likely to inspire a station to claim its independence. Though clearly a method to encourage you to switch characters, this nonetheless helps to give the tangible feel of an ongoing struggle for freedom. Of course people have heard the stories about Jessica Moon. She's a living legend. The next 4 stations over are named in her honour. But if you've heard one, you've heard them all. What the people need now is a new hero. New stories. In a very subtle way, the galaxy remembers you. Number 8. Night in the Woods. I've been following the development of Night in the Woods on Twitter for absolutely ages before it came out. So much so that when it finally did come out, I couldn't quite believe it was real. Not only was it real, it was one of the most beautifully realized spaces I've ever played in a video game. To play Night in the Woods is to know that Possum Springs is, beyond a doubt, a completely real place. It doesn't physically exist on Earth, but every line of dialogue that its inhabitants speak is steeped in genuine lived experience. There's so much honesty in what it's like to walk to the same places every day to meet your friends, to wave to the same people each morning, and choose which ones you want to say hi to, just to see how they're doing. Despite being a fictional town about animal people, who have cats, what? This makes for a place you genuinely want to just be in. The cast of characters is not only one you really want to hang out with, but when you're asked to choose, you'll genuinely agonize over who you want to spend the time getting to know. Mae Borowski is adrift in her life, and it's hard not to sympathize with her plight. As someone who's maybe not exactly sure what their life holds in store for them next, I found this pretty relatable. Maybe kind of uncomfortably relatable. Night in the Woods handles these themes delicately and powerfully, capturing the emotional range of coming home and seeing all the people you love, despite the fact that they weren't quite ready for you, and you all trying to make it work together anyway. There's a part where Mae and her mother have a big fight, and even though it's coming from a place of love, it's rough to watch. I've definitely had that fight with my parents. This is a familiar pit in my stomach. I've definitely had these chats with my friends. Another thing that's undeniably real about this game, and even more resonant than ever in 2017, is the level of unspoken, seething rage at the society-wide structures that make people miserable in service to systems of capital, and I've always got time for that. Possum Springs is a former mining community, and the mines have been closed for a long time, but at no point does a character say the words, "I am sad that the mines are closed." Yet the sentiment is heavy in the air. Every character above a certain age has had their lives and actions coloured by this sudden shift in labour priorities, and every character below that age has inherited that trauma without really having the tools to understand it. But they love each other, and they're determined to work through their shit if at all possible, be it family crisis, existential dread, friendly knife fight, or that strange hooded figure that runs around at night. Who is it? Maybe the cat knows! Number 7. Street Fighter V. No, hang on a minute. Guilty Gear Xrd Rev 2? Tekken 7? Injustice 2? Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite? Pokken Tournament DX? Nidhogg 2? Okay, look, fighting games, alright? My number 7 game of the year for 2017 is fighting games. It's been a completely ridiculous year for fighting games, an easy contender for the best ever. I've spent most of my time playing the second season of Street Fighter V, which has rounded out the familiar returning cast with a host of cool new fighters, each of whom feels like they're testing the water for a super cool new design direction for the game to explore. There's a character with simplified inputs, perhaps to provide a more accessible starting point for the game. There's a character whose offense is heavily counter-based, allowing her to shift the tempo of a fight at totally new times. There's a character who uses crystal ball projectiles and looks like she slipped in from the anime dimension, and even a character as tall as 2 Kens. 2! But there's just so much else. Guilty Gear's Rev 2 update has breathed new life into the already extremely alive Revelator, resulting in a game that has almost too much energy for its own good, but settles at just the right level of jaw-on-the-floor aesthetic style and lightning-fast action. Tekken 7 has finally hit home consoles, and it's hit them hard and fast. An instantly appealing brawl of limbs and slow-motion photo finishes hark back to what you had always imagined fighting games to be, hiding an incredibly deep game of space control and serpentine movement. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, though suffering from a somewhat controversial launch, has nonetheless fostered its characteristic dedicated community who will never stop loving doing really unfair shit. Every player is just waiting because they know, as soon as this combo ends, they're going to hit back with some equally unfair shit of their own. It rules. Injustice 2 is out too, and though its central theme of fascism versus techno-fascism isn't really for me, I've got nothing but respect for a game in which Swamp Thing can beat the tar out of Atrocitus and his angry laser cat. And I guess Hellboy and the Ninja Turtles are in this game now? Fighting games, folks. There's honestly just way too much for me to cover here, so I'll just say this. There are so many great fighting games out right now, that there's almost definitely never been a better time to dip a toe in. If any of these appeal to you at all, give one a go. Find some folks to play with. Playing a fighting game is really like nothing else. And if by some miracle you're still holding out for the perfect one, maybe Dragon Ball FighterZ, Arika Fighting EX Layer, or BlazBlue Cross Tank Battle will whet your appetite. It just never stops. Number 6. Lisa. Lisa helped me kick my year off, and really got me geared up for the kinds of emotions I'd be feeling over the course of 2017. Taking place in a dismal future where a mysterious event has caused all of the women in the world to vanish, Lisa sees you helping Brad Armstrong try to find his adopted daughter Buddy, who has been kidnapped by one of the warlords who runs the world, now fallen into a thoroughly post-apocalypse. In the ensuing adventure, you'll find a peculiar cocktail of dark humour, intricate, party-centric turn-based combat, and just an impossibly bleak study of unchained masculinity at the end of the world. When I say this game is bleak, I'm deadly serious. Let me show you what I mean. If a character's health falls to 0, like in a lot of other RPGs, they're knocked out, and you need something suitably thematic to recover them, like a waft of perfume. But then partway through the game you're knocked out and taken to a warehouse where an assemblage of total strangers demand that you win 3 rounds of Russian roulette in order to win. Instantly you have to rank your friends in order of importance to your mission, despite them signing up in good faith to you, probably making funny jokes as they did so. 4 of my friends died permanently in this section, and I sent them to their deaths. I told them to put that revolver to their head. I decided they were less important than the ones that survived. It's full of little twists on classic RPG mechanics that make the world just that little bit more hostile and desolate. Maybe while you're sleeping you'll be bitten by a scorpion and wake up feeling worse than when you went to bed. Maybe that boss you've been leveling up to beat will just bite one of your character's heads off, and that's it, they're just dead now. A personal favourite touch of mine are the all too familiar heavy-handed moral choices, where the options are sacrificing a friend, sawing off your own arm, or calling your assailant a coward and attacking him. Except if you pick the third option, he laughs at you for thinking you were in control, knocks you out, executes your friend, and dismembers you. See? Bleak. By sharpening the edges of the familiar RPG, Lisa creates a mood that hardens you to the outside world, and asks challenging questions not just of Brad, but of you. How can you show compassion for your friends when you know that they could be taken away from you at any minute? How can you promise you'll never abuse substances again when getting by is so hard, and they make it so much easier? Do you believe yourself when you say you're doing this to help Buddy, while those who know you best repeatedly insist you're being selfish? Can you ever truly account for the effects of trauma on your ability to relate to others? Should you? Play Lisa. Number 5. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Bet this one's a surprise, huh? PUBG is an absurd phenomenon. More people start playing it every day than I have ever met, and though exactly how many of them are idle bots remains to be seen, it's still an absolutely astonishing set of numbers. What makes Plunkbat stand out to me is how many conventions of the genre it just boldly flies against. You can very easily land miles from anywhere and just wander around for half an hour, spending 80% of your game just taking in your surroundings before you ever see anyone at all, and still glide in at the end and make the top 10. The weapon drops are terrifyingly random, leading to all sorts of fantastic superstitions and rituals about where, how and when to drop to maximize your chance of getting the right equipment to even play. The kill counter may give you points to buy crates with, but in Battle Royale it's very clear that only one kill ever really matters, meaning that by being in the right place at the right time, a player who'd have real difficulty winning a round of Counter-Strike or Call of Duty can just plant that one all-important bullet, grabbing victory from the kind of person those other games might have convinced you deserved to win. It's really a very peculiar thing, this enormous game that centers almost entirely around establishing totally asymmetric encounters while minimizing the amount that you blunder into. But it's clearly extremely compelling. Perhaps the sting of having your head exploded from 400 meters away by someone you didn't see eases off a bit when you can queue up for another round immediately with 99 other people who don't know you and didn't see that happen. Perhaps the variance of having to bring a frying pan to a gunfight and win leads to moments so cool they outweigh the other 10 times you didn't manage it. On the day Plunk beat Dota 2 to be the most popular game on the surface of the earth, Bluehole Studio, who are now shockingly called the PUBG Corporation, didn't even have a Wikipedia page. They still don't. They became one of the most relevant development studios in the world, faster than the relentless demand for information could keep up with them. That's something. Number 4. Raquin. I'm a simple creature. When I hear the phrase "to the moon," my ears prick up. I can't help it. I was part of a secret project that started in 2011 where a simple activation phrase would be enough to induce total emotional overload in the subject. So when I heard that Laura Shigehara, the person responsible for much of To the Moon's soundtrack, was working on a game of her own, I was there immediately. Immediately after I'd finished replaying To the Moon and crying a lot. Raquin sees you playing the role of a sick child who has been brought into hospital while his mother waits for him to get better, with her visiting him to read him stories from the titular Raquin, a hefty book of fantastical myths, heroes, and creatures. Though you begin by getting to know the other patients and their stories, it's not long before you're launched into the world described on Raquin's pages, and finding it bears a surprising resemblance to the hospital, perhaps even a direct connection. One by one, you find these people, alternating between a hospital bedside and the shared dream space, getting to know them and trying to find out how you can help them. It seems innocuous, but the theme of just helping permeates the entire game. Everywhere you go, everyone you meet, you're just listening, understanding, and trying to lend a hand where you can. And only where you can. You can't just say the right words to fix a history of abuse. There's no combination of dialogue options that can take you back to the way things were before someone you love was put into a coma. And sometimes when bridges are burned between people, they're burned for good. These events have a real, sometimes lifelong footprint, and the game is clear about that. But if you try, if you're empathetic, if you're willing to listen, maybe you can make them easier to cope with. It refreshingly takes the explicitly childlike perspective of wanting everyone to be okay, and portrays it sympathetically rather than something to be ridiculed. It feels great to be able to call something childish as a compliment rather than as a pejorative. Raquin casts empathy as the most unambiguous good in an unfair world, and demonstrates its healing power through little more than careful writing, evocative spaces, and soul-shattering music. And when these things are as good as they are in this game, what more do you really need? DokiDoki Literature Club. Huh? That's strange. I was sure I decided not to put this game on my list. Well, in any case, DokiDoki Literature Club is a visual novel by Team Salvato, a studio set up by former professional Super Smash Bros. Player Dan Salvato, who... really a very smart and well put together game about misery, but one I don't even know if I like, owing to the fact that... You join your friend Sayori at the Literature Club and meet all her friends there. Over the next few weeks you'll get to know them all through conversation and the medium of poetry, perhaps choosing a friend that you like the most to try and get to know them a little better. There's multiple paths to pursue, and each has unique dialogue, images, and... leads to an experience where I found myself staring slack-jawed at the screen more than once because of the sheer quality of the craftsmanship, but ultimately felt that the game was difficult to recommend because its message didn't feel like it justified its reliance on the imagery of young girls harming themselves to shock the player. But is that even right? Does it make sense for me to say that when... A really charming script and a fun premise make it accessible even to people who haven't found visual novels to be the kind of thing they're into in the past, and the characters are people you just can't wait to get to know. In addition to Sayori, there's Monica, the dedicated club president, Yuri, the sensitive and quiet poet, and now... well made. Its use of metatextual elements to create psychological horror that involves the player is exactly my kind of thing. But I still feel like it falls victim to the kinds of genre trappings it seems like it ought to be criticizing. If you can stomach the things the content warnings mention, I can only really suggest you give it a go, because I'm at a loss. At the end of the day, I just have no idea what to say. Make it one of my games of the year! Number 3. Number 2. We Know the Devil. I've actually had a lot of difficulty writing about this game. I bought it kind of on a whim when I was buying some other games, some of which made it into this list and some of which didn't, and the experience I had with it was so unexpectedly personal that I was left totally blindsided. When I say this isn't my number 1 game of the year, know that it absolutely could be, and I'm extremely likely to be thinking about my time with it for exactly as long as number 1, if not longer. We Know the Devil is a visual novel by Date Naito that sees you following the exploits of a group of 3 wayward teens who have been sent to a summer camp that fits with what I know about summer camps from American television in that it, like them, is trash and garbage. You must guide them through their stay at this camp by deciding at a variety of points which of them will pair up to go and do something. Do you want Jupiter and Neptune to go and investigate the faulty breaker box? Do you want Venus and Jupiter to be the ones who go and check if anyone's outside? These will all have unique dialogues, and each paints a wider, textured picture of a group of people at a very weird time in their lives that, they're sure, is about to get even weirder. What instantly stands out about this game is just how all of it works in concert to create a hazy, heady feeling, like the memories you have of being a teenager. The writing is sharp and witty, but it never felt to me like it got away from the teens, never slipped into snide exchanges of quips. The music is absolutely gorgeous, seasoned with distant, gentle sounds in the calm moments, and the character portraits give your friends a distinctive, great look, while reducing everyone you don't care about to caricatures, only the parts of them that you'll remember when you tell this story again later in your life. It makes all of the game's emotional beats that much more poignant, because you're experiencing them in an environment that accentuates the kind of weird, quasi-nostalgia that memories like these evoke. This game is unique on this list because it's one of the few times in a game that I have felt really, genuinely seen as a person, in a way that I'd normally have to go to movies and books to get. Night in the Woods was relatable, and indeed still extremely good, but some of the vignettes in We Know the Devil felt like they were written specifically for me, in ways I was just completely not ready for. All the storytelling elements just blend together perfectly to make it that much more affecting. So, naturally, when I heard that the same studio was releasing something new soon, I was over the moon. Which is fitting, since it's called Heaven Will Be Mine, and promises such incredible verbs as joyride a mecha, fight the pull of gravity, and sext your enemies. Imagine if we lived in a world where the default adjective for video games wasn't attack, but sexed. Think about how different the grammar of video games would be in that world. Heaven Will Be Mine promises a glimpse into that world, and I can't wait. And now, in a very particular order, my game of 2017. This game is the first multiplayer shooter I've truly loved in years. I've played it for hundreds of hours, and it's only really aged like a fine wine for me, so much so that it would have been dishonest to exclude it just for being released last year. It uses hero-based multiplayer influences specifically and subtly to spice up the drier areas of both genres, and its host of adorable characters and a long tail of post-release support from the developers make this game my undisputed favourite of 2017. I am, of course, talking about my personal number one, Overwatch. Titanfall 2.